about it, a hell of a campaign slogan, isn't it? Save us from ourselves. That's basically what you're doing. We don't know how to do this. Interesting question offered up from Tom out of Savage. With this is good. This is very good callback material, which we will explain if necessary. Would the mayor be willing to pretend to eat from a diaper to show how far he's committed to unity? That, of course, was the famous or infamous Les Steckel, former Vikings coach, approach back in that infamous 1984 season. What did we finish? I think 2 and whatever.
3-13.
3-13. You're right. That's exactly what it was. 3-13. I like what Allen and Afton says. Couldn't they have just paid former Mayor Sharon Sales Belton a few bucks to come in and play mediator and counselor? Or Alan Page? Probably could at least save some money.
Yeah. Do a little summit.
Did you read this from the Star Tribune story? This is from, hold on, let me see if I got to get the right. This is, I think, from Vita. Vita said, this is a city council member, said she said the most moving part of the session, listen to this, was when newly elected council member Pearl Warren talked candidly about how difficult it has been for her to feel safe speaking out as a new council member representing North Minneapolis. Warren said she considered the session, quote, a very brave space, unquote, and said, I support the bravery in the space for people to be honest and tell their truth. Well, I'm not sure Pecos River would be enough. If that's an accurate portrayal of what is going on there, as a former Viking quarterback once said, where are we, America? In all seriousness. She talked candidly about how difficult it has been for her to feel safe speaking out as a new council member. So, in effect, she's saying the $1.4 million is worth it because that's my new safe space. But the safe space has got to be in city council meetings, doesn't it?
That's the idea.
And that shouldn't, by the way, this is where it gets goofy, too. Robust debate, you shouldn't have to apologize for.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be, I think,
unsafe,
antiseptically. Yeah. We tend to overcorrect and overreact on all this stuff. But when you have a council member saying, in effect, and we've heard this before, not quite as directly, that I don't even know if I want to get in the middle of this. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say how I really feel about the way some of the other members are bullying. You know, they also need, I wonder if they covered, I'm hoping for at $1.4 million, there's going to be a couple other sessions. Get some bang for your buck. So I hope they haven't already spent the $1.4 million.
Wasn't it like a 3-year contract?
Oh, that's true. It was. You're right. 3-year contract.
So are they meeting quarterly?
I don't know that they're meeting. But now this, I don't think this involved any city council members. But remember the story, we talked about this both on Enough Said and I think on radio too. Maybe we didn't talk about it on radio, but I think we did. That there were these events, anti-Mayor Fry events in the city in which you could swing a stick at a Mayor Fry piñata, which in of itself still astounds me that's where we get. And it was viewed as a safe way to get your emotions out, because no one was really being hurt, even though the symbolism would have been viewed a lot differently, believe me, if the piñata would have been about somebody else, like let's say Ilhan Omar, somebody else. The response would not have been chuckling, I don't think, or, oh, it's harmless fun, everybody's just having a good time. I don't think there were any city council members at that, but maybe there were. I don't know. Do you remember that piñata controversy?
Of course. Yes, I do.
Which was brought to our attention?
It was.
That's good stuff there, man. That's really good stuff. All right, look at what else. Let's see where we got a couple other texts I want to get to. Don't forget Goessling, bottom of the hour. Do we save the Edina story for him?
I think so.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I think so.
It's a heck of a deal.
I'm laughing because President Trump is speaking on Air Force One, or just talked on Air Force One. This would be, I think, the overcooked Trump controversy of the day.
Okay.
Everyone's mad because he's going to the
to game three. Yeah.
And people are saying the question, like, what's the message you're sending to everyday Americans, to go to this game? The average ticket's like $8,000. I got to get the audios line. Apparently, according to Aaron Rupar, you can watch it on TV. That's the way life goes.
And people are mad at him about that?
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to be. It's like, well, not everybody can go to the finals. That's the way, he's right. That's the way life goes.
And we kind of already knew that, didn't we? Whether the president shows up or not. Are they relating it to him being there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm his son, I'm a little annoyed because he didn't go to his wedding, but he's got time to go to this.
Yeah, that has been.
That's the other line I've seen, but that's the way life goes.
That has been brought up. Very, very true, Davey. I had another item regarding the Palmisano and others have said that going to work at City Hall can feel like entering a toxic workplace. I hate the terms, though, because we're back to the buzzwords.
We're playing bingo with that whole thing.
Yeah, just speak
safe space
English, for God's sake. Yes. Just speak English where everybody can understand. Because the problem is you throw out these terms and then you can't even have any debate and discussion about them. Nope, that's toxic. Well, it might be toxic, but then for somebody else it might be, well, I got to stand my ground on this particular issue, and I got a little animated and heated about it. I don't know. But English is. See, that's what they need. They need to hire another service to learn how to speak English, in a way that everybody can understand, where we're not kind of rolling our eyes through the whole thing.
We need the uncorporatization of lingo, of language.
That would be helpful. I got to believe there's services for that, because any place there is to make money, people will find it, right?
That's true.
Don't you think?
But just translating, like we just talked about everything that the Vikings just said at their press conference. Like that's not how normal people talk.
At a punk concert last year, one council member cursed Fry on stage. A different council member accused a colleague of using the same vulgarity to demean her as a child on the day. That's a charge he denies. I don't remember the cursing. Do you?
I do on the one stage thing.
Do you?
Yes, yeah. I do remember that.
That's a beautiful thing.
People found the audio of it.
All right, let's stay on schedule. I got a couple other texts to get to. We'll save Edina stories and some football conversation for Ben Goessling at the bottom of the hour. I had another shorty that I wanted to get to. I'll try to find it and come back and pay off a tease I didn't even really explain. Next.
You're listening.
612 guy regarding our Alamo discussion at the start of the show. Dan, in your movie, is it important that the Alamo has no basement? Like it was when Pee Wee Herman was trying to recover his stolen bike in his 1985 motion picture. Pee Wee's Big Adventure, one of my favorite quirky movies ever. I think it came out in, as I said, 85. And in that film, he interrupts an Alamo tour. He's on an Alamo tour to ask, aren't we going to see the basement? And at that point, the tour guide, with a guttural laugh, says, there's no basement at the Alamo. And everybody else around there just starts laughing. That's become kind of a famous moment from the film. In fact, the bike that he used in that film, that's the center of that movie, has appeared outside the Alamo on a number of occasions, they tell me. Do you ever see Pee Wee's Big Adventure? Any of the Pee Wee Herman
30
films?
Years ago, yeah. It's been years.
A long time for me, too. But, yeah, that's become kind of a classic joke, the whether the Alamo has a basement or not. Where were we? A couple other texts regarding the Minneapolis stuff. This is John from Brainerd. How come Minneapolis City Council members talk about feeling unsafe and the $1 million couples council allowed for bravery? They should have joined me for my year-long combat deployments to Iraq and or Afghanistan. Deployments are where true bravery exists. Yeah, it's a dangerous road to go down and that goes back to just using this lingo language, bravery. Here's my question. Haven't we heard from occasion people in the city when someone comes to Minneapolis and says, I don't feel very safe here? Don't they get mocked and ridiculed and basically say, first of all, it's not that unsafe. Secondly, buck up a little bit. So could that be turned around on the city council members to say, yeah, I get it. It's a little rough, or it's probably not. People probably don't conduct themselves as civilly as they should, but seriously? Unsafe? Like somebody's going to hurt you? Right. I mean, it's just funny how when we use the term, one of us uses the term, we feel it's important. Well, yeah, we need to feel safe and we feel unsafe in a situation. But if somebody else uses it, they're often mocked and ridiculed for it and saying, well, come on, aren't you exaggerating just a bit? The issue, the real, I guess, whatever you want to call it, firm outside agency that the city needs to hire, maybe even if it costs another $1.4 million, is an agency that will challenge city council members and the mayor to be more interested in governing, legislating, and not performing. Because I think the mayor does that some, but I think the city council does it almost all of the time. You come away saying, are we really talking about anything that's going to get us anywhere? Or is it, here's my checklist of the subjects I'm supposed to, in my position, to feel better about myself, handle. I'm going to check the box. I'm going to perform it, whether it has anything to do with managing what's going on in the city of Minneapolis and dealing with real issues that we need to mess with. We got into this with the idea that some hotels were in the meat grinder if they allowed some ICE members to stay there when they were in a position where they were stuck. Right. And even I think other city council members say, where are we going with this thing? We're going to punish these hotels. Now, it didn't go anywhere. And that's the point. If you know it's not going to go anywhere ultimately, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time, and you're only bringing it up to perform. Correct. Because they can check that box. I stood tall on that particular issue. They had to think about their liquor license for 10 minutes because they had the ICE agents at their hotel. This is the end. Another one? My only I feel like we're out at Maynard's on a Friday. The hits just keep on coming. People who own property near George Floyd Square are upset that the city notified them they are picking up part of the tab for an overhaul of streets and infrastructure in a part of Minneapolis drastically altered by what happened there in 2020. This is also StarTribune.com. City leaders have debated for the past 6 years. Let me emphasize that. 6 years. How to manage, renovate, and reconstruct the area around 38th Street and Chicago Avenue after George Floyd was killed there by Minneapolis police. In December, the outgoing city council finally agreed on a plan after years of discord. Well, they hadn't hired the agency yet. They didn't know what to do, right? That's why there was discord. That's the problem. They needed to hire Darcy Loma Coaching and Consulting a little sooner. Here's the kicker. Property owners in the area say they were surprised to learn about 5 weeks ago that they would be expected to pay over $636,000 in special assessments for a $15 million overhaul of streets and infrastructure set to begin next week. Some of them told a city council committee they cannot bear the cost given the hardships many endured in the riots and unrest that followed Floyd's murder. Here's the money quote from Bridget Stewart, spokesperson for Agape Movement. We are exhausted emotionally, mentally, physically, and now you're asking us to be financially exhausted. We're living inside the wire and New Jack City. Stop playing with us. Stop holding us hostage we deserve more. Now, again, the overall price, $15 million is much bigger than $636,000. But it's hard for me to blame any businesses for saying, wait a minute now. You guys have taken 6 years to begin to figure out. We haven't done any of it yet to figure out what the master plan is going to be. We've had to continue to conduct business there and work there, etc., in this sort of netherland, waiting for whatever your pronouncements are going to be. And now you're asking us to help foot the bill? And even if, again, that's a small percentage of the total bill, again, you just shake your head and say, what are you doing? Because most people will agree that all that indecision, all the politically charged nature of that spot, we understand. I get all of that. But the fact that it's taken this long, nobody wins in the interim, right? We've heard that. We've seen stories on that forever, on businesses and individuals saying, what are we doing? And businesses that had nothing to do with the action, which was a police officer murdering a citizen. You can think whatever you want of the citizen. That's the fact, as far as I'm concerned. And somehow you're going to transfer. And then, as I said, in the immediate aftermath and forever since, first you've got a mess on your hands in the immediate aftermath in that spot. Then you have the indecision of, well, where's this thing going? And every political constituency apparently has to be satisfied in this situation, speaking of checking boxes. And now you're telling them, in addition to all of the madness that you have inherited, even though you had nothing to do with it, we're going to ask you to write a check. And I would say if the amount's $20, it's a bad look, whatever. And I don't know what goes to business by business, what it actually breaks down to, but it's a wonderful look for sure. Let's do this. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. Let's toy department it a little bit. We'll get Ben Goessling on the new Vikings general manager and on a track and field controversy that we are also calling Edina stories, or another Edina story. Who better than our own track and field aficionado to weigh in on that? And who knows what else with Mr. Goessling. Lavelle will join in about an hour.
This is Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barrero on The Fan.
We could do the predictable thing with our next guest, and we could spend most of the next 20 minutes or so talking about the latest Vikings off-season practice sessions, commentary from the quarterbacks who are allegedly competing for the job, comments from the new general manager just introduced, or from KOC, who made the hire. And we probably will get to some of this stuff before the thing is done.
Talk about Darrisaw's leg.
That's right.
He brought it up according to our update today.
Also true. But when we have Ben Goessling on, what we really look for is a juicy track and field related controversy. Better yet, we had a sounder for this. Does the sounder still exist? Didn't we have an Edina Stories sounder?
I'll see if I can
find it. See if
you
can find it.
Yeah.
It's been years since we've played it.
It has.
Because I maintain half the reason this story has become as big as it is isn't because it raises interesting questions of fairness, but because Edina is involved in it, and people in this town, I've been here long enough to know it charges everything.
Well, click on it. It's Goessling's paper that got the Edina Stories bit going.
No, that's true.
It was every 2 days.
Every 2 days. That's exactly right.
Edina neighbor doesn't like sidewalk. Bang.
All right, here's the Twitter item. This is from Jerry Mackin. Who's Jerry Mackin?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you knew he was some high school big shot. Well, I'll try to give him proper credit in a minute. He sent out a tweet that Gargi then passed along to me. I'm sure Goessling knows the story now. Rosemount was cost a school record, all state honors, and a chance at a state championship due to a bad call. The Edina runner tries to throw a shoulder at a runner that had passed them, jousts his baton, and then flops out of bounds when losing his balance. Rosemount was then charged with impeding the runner and was DQ'd. Edina was awarded a rerun. The Rosemount coach was told the call cannot be appealed. How is this fair or just? When you have a video at the state meet, why is it not used for making decisions that have this big of an impact? So there's a lot to get to there. Start wherever you want.
Well, I have been in that setting at the state meet, not that particular setting, but in a setting at the state meet where we got a 4x4 DQ'd, and it was for a couple of steps on the line, which you can't do when you're in the first leg of it and you have to stay in your lane. So the process of appealing that is always, it's complicated, and it's not always terribly easy to do because an official makes a call and you can't use video. That is a state high school league rule. I think that's a National Federation of High Schools rule as well, that there's video from the stands cannot be used in an appeal process of a call. So the video that's out there, the reason it can't be used is the rules specifically prohibit that. And Seifert and I were actually texting about this today. And, of course, big replay advocate that he is, he
yes,
says,
he is.
we need to make it reviewable.
Yeah.
So
got to make it right.
He went immediately to that. Yes, got to get it right. But, yes, the appeal process is not terribly easy in these settings because you can do it. You can go and make your case, but there's not really a way to, state with a lot of convincing evidence, because you can't use the video to say, here's what happened. So, I mean, I've watched it a couple times. It looked to me like it was a clean pass. I didn't see any contact from Rosemount there. I mean, you typically have to have a 2-stride lead before you cut back in, but I don't think that was the issue as much as it looked like the contact, if there was any, or at least the fall starts when the Rosemount runner's trying to pass on the Edina runner's outside shoulder. Mm-hmm. And then it looked like he maybe was trying to keep his space a little bit with his shoulder there, which you can do it. It's probably not something I would necessarily try to do in that setting, mm-hmm. but there is sometimes some contact. So I think that's a little bit of a judgment call. But yeah, the appeal process is tricky in those settings. And Edina does end up getting into the final tomorrow in the rerun. I think they got the last spot in, which is, the rerun is always an interesting thing too, because it's like, yeah, you can go do it, but your kids just went out the first time and now they're completely gassed and they have to go do it again, and they'll have enough chance to recover now. But for the team that gets DQ'd, there's not much of a remedy. So it's a tricky process, and I don't know that we have a great answer to these things. It's hard because, both these kids now, it's a big thing on social media, and it will be for a little bit. Right. And kids are going to have their state meet experience affected because of that. But yeah, the process is not terribly clean, especially when you have video available that's pretty much not admissible as evidence. So it gets kind of messy that way. I was leaving the meet yesterday after our kids had finished running. I wasn't watching the 4x4 specifically as we were packing up our camp. And I'd heard something happen with the Rosemount 4x4. I didn't see exactly what until today. And then this popped up, and it's like, okay, yeah, that was why everybody was kind of buzzing about this. And, we have Rosemount in our conference, and they're one of the great programs in the state, and this doesn't necessarily change that. But, really have a lot of respect for the coaches over there, Jay and Sarah Hatley, the head coaches, and Chris Hart is the longtime distance coach. I'm big fans of all of them. So it's a bummer for them. And, I'm sure they'll come back from it. But yeah, you hate to see that happen when kids are out competing and the call gets made and there's not really much you can do about it. I understand the process, but it's not a terribly fun way to have your season end in that particular event.
Did the Edina runner go SGA on the bit? Was he legitimately bumped out? Was that a NBA level basketball flop on a track and field oval?
Well, it looked to me like when the Rosemount runner goes around, I think the contact I saw was when he tries to kind of give a little bit of a shoulder to him, maybe kind of, I don't know if it was to mark his spot or if he was trying to kind of impede or come back on the Rosemount runner a little bit. It looked like that was kind of where things were initiated. I looked at it a few times to see if legs got tangled up or anything. I didn't see anything there. So I think he might have gotten off balance when he was trying to give the arm, but the question of, should you give the arm, I think is probably, I guess I would say, especially in a prelim, when those teams are probably running towards, they are running towards the front. If Rosemount was possibly getting a school record out of it, I think they're running far enough up that if you finish high enough in those prelims, you're going to make the final regardless. I think it's top 2 in each heat and then the next 5 based on time. So it didn't seem to me like it was in any great danger of Edina's race getting jeopardized. So it feels like a chance not worth taking to me. That would probably be, if I was coaching, that's probably where I would go with it. But it looked like that's where things started, and then it's hard to tell from there if he lost his balance exactly when that happened. But yeah, that's at least how I saw it. It seemed like when he starts with the arm, that's kind of where things go haywire.
Help me out on one other part of it. So my assumption is when a ruling is made in this case, they are reviewing tape, right? They're not simply responding on the basis of what they observed, monitors observed live, correct? Are they looking at a tape?
I don't believe they're looking at tape. Typically what happens, and if you watch it, you can see an official on the outside of the turn raise a yellow flag. So a yellow flag means I saw something that we need to review. And because typically if you come around, and I can remember I think it was that exact turn that we got DQ'd in 2022. It was our first leg. And I remember seeing the yellow flag go up, and then I heard one of the officials say to the other one, lane 6. I'm like, oh, that's us. And we were close to, I think, setting a school record. That was in the final. And I think we would have been third. We got DQ'd. So basically what happens is they put the flag up, and then the official that saw it, I think, goes in after the race and writes a brief summary of what they saw. And then you get the summons that nobody ever wants. In this case, it would have been, would the Rosemont head coach please approach the scores? I mean, you know it's coming, and whenever you get that, it's like, okay, here we go. So that's probably what happened. You get a chance to state your case, but generally what the official saw at the moment is kind of what stands. So, yeah, I mean, in that official, I think, is on the outside of the whole thing, and I would have to know exactly what he put in his report. If there was any contact the path was very close, so it's hard to tell if there's any contact exactly there. But generally, no, I don't think there's video involved in this process at all. I think they have a lot more officials at state meets than they do in a regular meet. So they call things a lot tighter, but I think that's typically just the eye of the official at the moment that is the thing that initiates the process.
So am I reading you right that you think it probably was a bad decision, but you think it's closer than others who said, my God, travesty, injustice of the century, absolutely horrific call?
I think it was a bad decision. Okay. It's not probably something I would have called. I generally am a little more of the mindset of let them play. I mean, if you were to say that the Edina guy, I mean, if they had a view that they thought there was contact that took the Edina guy down, then that's one thing. But watching that video, I didn't see it that way. Right. So, but did that official have that vantage point? I would guess probably not quite to that degree. So it's always, this is how all this stuff goes. We have slow motion replays after the fact to analyze things that people are deciding in real time in the spur of the moment. So it's one that, I didn't see enough that I would have called it if I was officiating the meet. Okay. But, whether he flopped or not, it's hard to tell. But to me, I think if I was to be coaching the runner, I'd say don't put the arm out there.
Yes, right.
Yeah, he passed you. Just come back on him, especially in a prelim. You're going to get through the finals. Right. It's not worth it.
Last question on this, and we'll actually get to some football too. If the story did not involve what's perceived online, of course, as chicanery by Edina, if it was done by a less, shall we say, famous or easy to loathe school, not according to me, but according to a lot of people, would this be even discussed?
I don't think it would be as big of a deal. I mean, I think people are reacting to the arm bar and then the flailing of the baton, because there was something earlier this year, I think in a college meet with a sprint relay where people start kind of going for, trying to hit people with the baton. So, I mean, some of this stuff comes up, but I don't know that it would have been as big of a deal in that setting. So yeah, I think the Edina part of it probably had a little bit to do with it. It becomes one of those things that's easier to jump on. But yeah, it's that probably makes for a little more discussion of it. And probably is part of the reason we're having a conversation. Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assumption on your part there.
Gargi, did you find the sounder for Edina Stories?
No, I don't know where it is.
Damn, that was a good one. Was it? I thought it was pretty good.
It was a great sounder.
Really
Dave
was
Allen
a good sounder from way back.
Great.
Well, maybe someday you can find it.
I think it was a Leave It to Beaver theme.
Yes, it's exactly what it was. You're 100% right. I get accused of tweaking the head coach of the Vikings often for his proclivity to engage in word salad. But I actually thought his answer regarding all of the, I guess, tumult or all the amateur psychoanalysis of what J.J. McCarthy said the other day and what Kyler Murray is saying and where they're lining up in the classroom, I thought he gave a pretty good answer by his standards, a pretty straightforward one, which was he did the salad, but then he said, actually, what I'm looking for is, are you making the right read? Are you making the right adjustments? Are you getting the ball to the right place? And that ultimately, that's really what I'm concerned about more than necessarily how guys are going to talk about whatever is or isn't going on in this quote-unquote competition. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he, in that sense, it's a little bit like what we were talking about last week, I think, of that the important criterion in this QB competition, to whatever degree it is a competition, is going to be how everybody plays, and specifically probably how J.J. McCarthy demonstrates some of the improvement they've wanted to see. And he basically said that. It's were your eyes in the right place? Were you taking the drops in the right way that we wanted? Were you looking at the right reads on the play? Did you have the right footwork? Are you manipulating protection if you needed to make an adjustment to a Brian Flores blitz? So all of those things, I think, ultimately have a lot more to do with it. And he said, I mean, he had a couple things to say about, like, it's part of being a good teammate in how you talk about these things. But he did say, I don't need everybody to be best friends and smiley happy all the time. They are competing. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of it comes into it. If you feel like the quarterbacks are not approaching this with the right frame of mind, I mean, that's a little bit different.
Yes.
But when he said, I want them to be honest, that is part of it. If they're going to come out and say things honestly, you're going to have things make headlines every once in a while. And he didn't seem like he was terribly worried about that possibility and how it played out in this particular situation.
Did it surprise you at all that I think it was Mark Wilf confirmed that even though he clearly was reluctant to get into division of power all that much, seemed kind of bored with all the questions, that he confirmed eventually when pressed that Teasley will have, the new general manager, will have control over the 53-man roster?
No, that didn't really surprise me, because when he's talked about a traditional approach, I think that's been very much part of what they see as a traditional approach, where the GM does have 53-man roster control. I mean, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah had it in his tenure. Rick Spielman had it in his tenure. I think sometimes it becomes something where if you have a stronger voice in the head coach, maybe that even if you're not explicitly in control of the roster, you can wield some implicit control. I think there's been times we've probably seen that over the years. It's probably whether with Kevin O'Connell and maybe even Brian Flores. I certainly can remember times with Mike Zimmer where it was very clearly he wants this to happen. I mean, the one that sticks out to me was when Anthony Barr looked like he was going to sign with the Jets, and turns out he gets cold feet, and then they signed Anthony Barr, I think, for more money than they were planning to. So, sometimes those things happen, but I think the idea they've thought, the traditional, quote-unquote traditional structure they've envisioned, is one where the GM has full control of the roster. You'll hear from the head coach maybe more than some teams would do it, but yeah, that part of it, I think, was kind of always what they were intended. It was also interesting to hear that Rob Brzezinski will report to Nolan Teasley, and that has been how they've done it in the past. I mean, that was very much the case with Rob Brzezinski under Rick Spielman, and I don't know for sure if any of that changed under Kwesi, but I imagine it was probably very similar. Rob, of course, being as experienced as he is and having as much of the trust of the Wilfs as he does, it probably looks a little different in practice than it might otherwise. But yeah, that has been a lot of how they've done it. And we talked about, would they have done something with Rob that was different than that? And the people I talked to, it sounded like that was at least, all of the options were on the table, is how it was described to me as they were going through the search. But for them to land where they did is much more in keeping with how they've typically done it. So, in the end, I guess what they said about a traditional structure is pretty much where they landed.
Yeah, I think they probably in part made that decision so they didn't have to worry about people reviving the triangle of authority nonsense. Then this way they don't.
Yeah.
They could put that to bed, because we were all having fun with maybe new terms to update it, and that's apparently done. Going in, again, there's no way to know this, but going in, is it fair to say that if you stand by the reporting that you and a lot of folks who covered this team have written for many years, that there was an outsized influence from the head coach, maybe in part because of the personnel background from Kwesi that wasn't quite as, player developed. He didn't come at it, or didn't come through the system, at least in the front end, the way that Teasley has grown, right? Basically from the time that he was an intern, that there might be a greater chance that Teasley doesn't feel, he said all the right things with the coach, and basically said the coach and the quarterback are the two most important people in the organization in synergy, the whole bit. But that there's a better chance that Teasley might not defer as much and maybe not even be expected to defer as much, because supposedly you're hiring him because he is strong on the personnel side, on the scout side.
Yeah, I think you have somebody in here that has more of the background that the Vikings obviously wanted. It was a background that they pretty exclusively sought, other than Rob Brzezinski, I suppose. And it's one that Kevin O'Connell, I think, talked about this week in terms of the acumen he'd seen from Nolan Teasley. And I think he talked about part of his job is to try to be, something of a support in that way too. So, we'll see how that actually plays out, if that ends up happening that way. But yeah, I think it's probably something where you work better if everybody kind of knows the lane they're supposed to fit in, and everybody knows the role they're supposed to play. And that probably did change a little bit with Kwesi, almost maybe by necessity, because I know there were times where if there was a contract that a player was holding in, or there was a discussion of would this player get traded, Kevin O'Connell was more involved in those things, at least in terms of having contact with the player and talking through things with the player, than he might have had otherwise. So I think some of that happened because there was a little bit of a vacuum there when you have a GM that hadn't come from that world and maybe didn't have as much experience talking with players through contract disputes and that sort of thing. So I think some of that gap got filled by the head coach saying, I need to be involved here. And I don't think for a second that it's not, there's not some calculation of, this may be helpful for me too in the long run if I'm more involved in this. But I do think there were moments where he kind of stepped in because just it wasn't happening otherwise. So how that shapes his role in the front office probably is something that evolved over the course of his time with Kwesi. But I think if you get to the point now where you have a GM that you want to feel like he's in control of the roster and that he's empowered, you do have to have somebody that can say, even if we're close on this or we're tied on this, that I'm going to have the final say, and if I want to do something, I can do it. So, Teasley talked about, if we have disagreement, we're going to go back and talk through things and get to the point where we are all on the same page, or at least can come out of the room supporting the decision that's made. And I think that's how you want it to go in a perfect world. But having a place where everybody kind of understands, if we are at we're at an impasse here, that somebody can make the final decision and say, even if we are not able to get through this, we do have to make a call, and that call is going to come from the GM. So I think the traditional structure, and we talk about all that stuff, and I think they want it to work perfectly together. But if there's moments where there's a tie that needs to be broken, understanding who could break that tie, I think is probably helpful for everybody's clarity.
Last item, and I don't think anybody was necessarily surprised, but it's worth exploring, I think, one more time. Mark Wilf also said that both Teasley and KOC report to the ownership, right? One does not report to the other. Have you guys done, I'm curious to know, because once upon a time that wasn't the way it was done, right? It was generally the coach would report to the president of football operations, whatever fancy title, GM, doesn't matter. Yeah. But how unusual is it that that's the setup here? That now, because we know it would have been awkward given, he's still here, he being O'Connell, and you bring in a GM. But I'm trying to figure out, I still feel like it's a little bit off in terms of what I think is the best case to know everybody knows what's going on. You put your football guy in charge of the whole operation and you let him do his job. But do we have more of that than there used to be? Are there a lot of situations that you're aware of in which the coach and general manager, the coach doesn't report to the general manager, the president of football operations, but rather reports directly to the owner as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are examples of that around the NFL. Like the Packers actually have gone to more of that structure where I believe Russ Ball, their longtime cap guy, Brian Gutekunst, and Matt LaFleur all report to the president of the team. So you do see more of that. I think when they went to that, people made some triangle of authority jokes.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is different than that in the sense that it's not shared control of the roster. I think that's an important distinction to make. But whether it's been, I mean, Kevin O'Connell has done a weekly call with the Wilfs, I think, his entire time here. And when they hired both of those two, Kevin and Kwesi, it was, I think, the Wilfs making the hire. I think they made that fairly clear. It was the Wilfs making the hire of Kevin O'Connell. It was not Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah hiring Kevin O'Connell, even though he was hired first. So, and this was the case with Leslie Frazier. I remember that. And I think with Rick Spielman, he oversaw the search, but I do think it was technically the Wilfs saying we were the ones making the hire. So I think where this comes in terms of reporting is probably, is there a direct line of communication between the coach and the ownership? But really where this comes in is if somebody has to get fired. I think who has the ability to fire somebody is exactly. When we talk about reporting structure, that's got a lot to do with it. They're not going to say that, but that's probably a lot of what we're talking about. And I think in this particular situation, it would have been weird if Nolan Teasley had been given the authority in his first day on the job to fire the coach that predates him by several years and has a contract through 2029. So I think some of that does track with some things we've seen from the Vikings. You see a little bit of it around the NFL, and I think in this particular case, it probably was just a little more clean, a little less chaotic, perhaps, than if you'd done it another way where Teasley would have had the direct line of report with O'Connell.
Thank you, Ben. We appreciate you. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Thanks, Dan.
Ben Goessling covers the Vikings and the National Football League for the Star Tribune, and of course joins us weekly, and will do so again when as we prepare for, it's not that far off now, boys and girls, the 2026 National Football League season. Man, oh man, we hit the ground running. A couple NFC North games right off the bat, which I love. We start with the NFC North, we finish with the NFC North, don't we?
That's usually how it works.
Isn't that the way it should be?
Yeah.
Beautiful thing. Although I think it's been a long time since our first two games have been within the division, as I recall one of the Vikings historians mentioning. Top of the hour break, we'll prepare for Top 5 at 5, which will include
Lynx, Bears Stadium, Stanley Cup, NBA Finals, and what did Brian Windhorst, say today about Anthony Edwards that has Timberwolves Twitter in a panic?